Today, I will be interviewing Vincent. Vincent will be interviewing Iman, and we're going to be exploring places and visual identity, right? That's the name of the talk. Yeah. Go ahead.
Let me introduce to you Nadia Eldasher, who's one of the founders of Snap 14. And when I had came to Egypt for the first time, like 2 years ago, roughly 2 years ago, I did a story which was based loosely around Trinity, the Triad, and it was produced by Snap 14. That's how we connected. And eventually we also worked on the story which is exhibited in the corridor, you might have seen. And as Nadia said, I will be talking also with Iman a little bit later on. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here live, so we do it online. I've also brought some of my pictures, so I'm going to walk you through. And at the very end, there is a room to ask some questions if you may have.
All right, so for those of you that don't already know, I'm sure most of you know, Vincent is a Dutch photographer and filmmaker. His work has really been focused around reportage, fashion, and it's taken him all over the world. I've had the chance to work with him on 2 different projects, and I think it's been a really beautiful experience just to witness his process, and a lot of people, I think, got the opportunity to learn from him during these workshops this week. He has published books, films, and his art is really, really deeply rooted in research and genuine passion. I think we're very lucky to have you, Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I just want to quickly address the organizations of Cairo Photo Week for inviting me and doing such a great job on the festival. I've been really enjoying it. And also wanted to mention the Dutch embassy who has enabled my my trip to Cairo. Thank you.
All righty. So we'll jump right into it. I think one of the really interesting parts is understanding your journey, Vincent, and how you started in photography.
Well, I never really intended to become a photographer in the first place. And I think I was eventually fortunate enough to become a photographer, but I studied music to start with. And I grew up in a family. My father is a photographer, so I grew up with photography in the house. And I think just because of that, I kind of decided I didn't want to become a photographer for a very long time. And when I finally got a camera that I inherited from my grandfather, I started to explore surroundings of the place where I lived. And slowly I became really, really interested in photography, and I was looking a lot at war photographers at that time, photojournalism, and had in the back of my head I might actually vaguely wanted to study journalism, so I even applied, but was refused, and so I decided to go to Art Academy, where one of the subjects was photography. And in my mind, photography was the main subject, so that wasn't entirely true. It wasn't, in fact, was not true at all. So it didn't show up very often because I was taking pictures in the streets. And when I would show up, there were always questions: where the hell have you been? Why didn't you show up? So I finally decided to move to the Department of Photography because I thought it was a bit easier, and it was.
Yep. So what kind of photography did your father do? I don't think I ever asked you.
So my dad started as a photojournalist, and I would always hear the stories, which really were very fascinating. And for years I'd asked him to kind of show me those pictures. And when he finally did, those pictures were, well, typically the very grainy pictures of the 70s. So that certainly stimulated my imagination. And I kind of decided I wanted to actually go in this direction. And I never really did the really photojournalistic jobs, but what I did bordered it. So I worked a lot in the streets. I did a lot of travel in early days of my career, and I would shoot for magazines. I shot for a couple of in-flight magazines. That's how I started. And maybe I should show you a couple of these pictures that I took around the time. This picture actually was taken just before I started studying photography. And it has always been really important to me because it kind of it told me like I can obscure certain parts of the picture I don't need to see, and it told me about the importance of light. And at the time I was traveling in Caracas in Venezuela, and I was hiding inside a bakery, and there was this boy playing with a ball, and I would come out and shoot like a few frames and then go back into the bakery.
So he wouldn't see you?
Until the guy pushed me out of the bakery. But still remains an important picture to me.
Yes.
This actually is something that I started working on when I was still in school. I decided I had to do a trip, and so I did. And I obviously didn't have a lot of money at the time, so it was a trip I did on a shoestring. And
where were you?
This picture was shot in Guatemala, and actually at the time there was a war going on, like a civil war going on. And one night I wandered around in the city, this little village of Merida, and that's where I shot this picture. And on another trip that was actually part of the same series, I went to Havana. And then this is like a long time ago, it was 93. And added some pictures that were basically had the same flavor and the same build-up. It was more or less a collage build-up that I was really interested in. In color, I was seeking color. There's another one. The same story, and I was really lucky because I shot this story, and it also allowed me to publish like a first story when I came out of school.
Yeah, so your photography, I mean, in general, do you feel like it's changed over the years?
It certainly has changed, but I could imagine that I could shoot something like this today. And in fact, it also kind of, I still apply the same things the same elements in my fashion pictures actually. It's changed a little bit, so I was really interested to actually have multiple actions in one frame. And later on I would kind of break it up, like have like multiple pictures that were like in fact in one picture in my mind.
Yeah. So your interest was in war photography.
Yes.
Is that what you grew up with?
I would look a lot at people like Larry Burroughs, his work in Vietnam, or Philip Jones Griffiths, certainly Don McCullin. And I would buy Life magazine which published stories by Gil Perez, Salgado. There's another photographer that I looked at a lot, Franco Pagetti, wonderful Italian photographer, and a lot of people who were or are represented by the Magnum agency. And for a long time, I thought that would be the direction I would take, actually. Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah, what happened? I think the photography industry really changed when the World Trade Center came down, And it kind of continued for another 6 to 8 months in the same way. Then all of a sudden a lot of magazines fired their staff photographers, mostly photojournalists. And the assignments that I used to do with writers or journalists who travel with them, those ceased to exist. So I had to kind of rethink, in a way, my career. And I took the time to do that for about 6 to 8 months, basically looking at the work that I had done. And I went back to a lot of boxes that actually contained a lot of negatives and slides that I had dismissed earlier on or not properly looked at. And I discovered there was another photographer hiding in my own work. And I started to wonder why I actually dismissed those pictures. And so there was a big lesson, and I started to print those pictures. And eventually I moved to Paris because my girlfriend had a lot of work in Paris. I moved to Paris. And I really had to reinvent myself in that way. And because Paris has a lot of really great photographers. There are a lot of great magazines, there are a lot of jobs to be done, but still I came out of the Netherlands and no one actually knew any of the titles that I used to shoot for. So I had to kind of start over again. And a big break for me came when a friend of ours asked if I actually would be interested to shoot a fashion story. And I said I would be interested to do so if I could work with really good people. So that happened, and I shot one story, I shot a second story, and then I had a couple of agents coming to me, but I had barely a new portfolio, so I thought it was way too early to do so. And so I decided to shoot a few more stories and then put the portfolio back together again, you know. So it kind of combined like pictures that I shot earlier on with my latest work, of course. And I kind of started to reinvent a little bit the grammar for myself. So I experimented a lot with a snap camera that I had, shooting a lot without actually looking, just to loosen up, because I think people had got to know me for a particular image. And I felt the need to kind of change that, to loosen up.
Yeah. Did you ever, and do you still ever regret not staying in the war photography genre?
Sometimes I do.
What is it that you like about it? What is it that
Well, I think
draws
there's a
you?
lot of truth to be found in there, and it's the way I love to look at the world. Not necessarily in only good places, but also places which are more complicated to travel. And I think it's important to expose yourself to those different environments.
Yeah.
But for me, ultimately travel, being here or in Havana or in Morocco in this case, is actually not so different.
Yeah.
You can travel in your own room if you wish to.
Yeah. So I think one of the really unique things about your work is that you see things in a different way. What does the act of seeing mean to you?
So for me, the core of photography remains observation. And even with the new developments that we have today, and of course we have used Photoshop to a certain extent a lot over the last 20 years. Even with AI, I think the act of observation remains intact for me.
Yeah. Observation as in like visiting a place and exploring it and
Yeah.
understanding it, like what is that actually
Well, there's
look
something
like?
really beautiful about the immediacy of it. And I think photography in general, it's a response on something, to something. Even when you're shooting in the studio or putting a still life together, you might like it, you might not like it. It's a lot about likes and dislikes. But it's always a response. So I think the response in that particular moment, I think it's very, very important. If you go back and try to kind of modify it, it doesn't really mean that much to me.
Do you use Photoshop a lot in your work?
I
or-
use Photoshop just to make corrections, like light, dark, add a little contrast. I use it as the darkroom, but I never take elements out. Or I never reframe any of my pictures. If
Okay.
it's like if I feel that the frame is not correct, I don't use the picture. I don't use the picture.
Yeah.
I could be reframing pictures until the end of my my life, which is not the intention. I'd love to
Yes.
go out and shoot pictures.
Yes, yes, for sure. So the first photo that you showed us with the boy
Yeah.
playing the football outside that bakery, you say that this is the first photo that made you decide to become a photographer, and I'm curious why.
It was one of those pictures that sort of put me on the path of what I really wanted to do. And when I saw the picture when I got home, there were a few other pictures that I shot during the trip that were important. It gave me like a clear direction. So it has always remained a starting point for me. And I
Yeah.
still feel like I could have taken the picture today.
Yeah. So again, just going back to the way that you work and the way that I've experienced working with you is that there's always this connection between place and person and you, and there's this narrative that's drawn between the different characters. How do you approach this when you're shooting?
So in the case of documentary photography, I think we have to realize that that when you walk down the streets, there's just this whole environment with other people around you that you can connect with. You can choose to talk to them or not talk to them, and sometimes it's really great just to be the fly on the wall. Other moments you might need, in order to photograph something, you might need to talk to people or explain a little bit about what you're going to do, and then they leave you. And but I always strive to find the connection between the person and the environment, and that's the same in my fashion pictures. So I'm picky about whom I photograph, and it's not. I think in fashion photography, for me, physical beauty is not the core of the picture. If it would be, I probably have lost my interest by now. So I try to kind of find something else that I really love to photograph, and I bring this person into my photographs, but also to show like, this is really interesting. Let's collaborate, because I think with some of the best models that I worked with, some of the best people that I worked with, I was very fortunate to work with, it's the collaboration that actually counts. And over time, I find like finding the best picture or a good result less interesting than I used to. Of course, it has to be good, but there are other elements that actually count, I think, which are more important. I feel if it would be only aesthetics, you would be with your back against the wall at one point. So you need to find something else. And good example, actually, when I came to Egypt the very first time, I was exploring this. The triad, so the connection between Osiris, Isis, and Horus, and it was a beautiful trip that I made with two Egyptologists. it was really fortunate to work with.
I want to give some context here, is that Vincent actually went to like South Egypt in July and did these shoots for like 10 days almost, and like managed to take some beautiful pictures in the middle of like deep South Egyptian summer, like super tough. So I just feel like you.
Well, the conditions were not always ideal, but I had a great desire to visit these places, and it was just a really great chance because I was traveling with these very knowledgeable people who could give me like insights on the spot, which was really amazing. So yeah, that particular trip also kind of influenced a story which is actually on show here. So I got some ideas like about the desert, about things that I saw. And in particular, when I shot the story that's exhibited in the corridor right here, with Iman, I said I'd actually, two of my cameras had actually broken down, so I had no cameras left when I came to Cairo.
No, I don't think I knew this.
So I had these cameras in my bag, and I was in my hotel room. I was trying to shoot the frame, and it didn't work, and I kind of freaked out actually. And just tried my other camera and found out that it had stopped as well. So I said to myself, it must be the curse of the pharaoh, which of course wasn't true. But like, I didn't have anything left, so I left to have a coffee outside and found this amazing cafe. And just ordered this Turkish coffee, and I was watching like these air conditioners actually. And there was this statue which I really loved. And I started to think about that story, and of course there was inside the cafe, there was this incredible blue light. And I thought, why did I lose the cameras now? So I started to think, like, there was this guy coming by who was carrying bread. Like every 10 minutes he would return.
Yeah.
And I could imagine that just photographing this guy, only following this guy, would in itself be a beautiful documentary. And then I started to think maybe I should do a fashion story, and so I thought maybe I should get Iman. Then I thought that's going to be like really difficult to get everyone together, and then I was lucky enough that eventually happened.
Yeah, it like just kind of flowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get more into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So speaking of collaborations and connections and partnerships and things like that, one of the people you photographed a lot is your partner, Saskia.
Yeah.
I mean, I work with my husband.
Yeah.
I think it's not for everybody. What is it like for you?
Where shall I start? Let's say it's not always easy. It's great to collaborate with your partner, but the both of us have like strong ideas about how certain things should be done. And Saskia is also an artist, my partner, so she has ideas. She thinks a little bit differently. It tends to be a little more conceptual than what I do, whereas I do things more like on the spot. But I've worked a lot with Saskia, and we worked on a big project. It's named Ghost Don't Walk in Straight Lines. And that took, I think we worked 5 years on it before it was like finished. And we did a film. And we collaborated with some incredible artists on that project. And then of course the quite a few editorials that we shot together.
Yeah.
So if we shoot together, we always try to find like a good reason to do something. Like something that really feels a little different or opens a new perspective. But it's also important to work with other people.
Yeah, and I guess that's what makes the word collaborative, is that you are actually having that kind of conversation with her.
Yeah.
And discussing it. Is there anything here?
Yeah, this is one actually. There are two in this PDF. So this is one that I shot in Morocco, and it was actually one of the very first fashion stories that I did. and it was taken before anyone arrived. So that's always really great because you're not disturbed by anything else. And we were just walking down on the beach of this beautiful medieval coastal town of Essaouira in Morocco that I eventually ended up shooting a lot. I ended up shooting a lot in that place. And the rocks are actually stones that were part of a Portuguese fortress. And at this point in time, because I went back to check if it's kind of to see what remains, it's almost entirely submerged.
Now it's entirely submerged.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. And I found in a lot of my pictures, things have vanished or changed.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why people take pictures, right?
This picture actually was taken in the same town many years later, when I was finishing a book that I put together on Morocco for Vuitton. Actually, they asked me to edit a book, and I went back to my earliest photographs that I shot in the place, but I also added some new ones. So I traveled for another 5 weeks, and this is one of the pictures that I took.
Did you stage that, or was that just happening?
Sorry?
Did you stage that photo?
No.
Or it was just you caught it in time?
No, this just happened actually. And we were trying to walk around it, and the dress all of a sudden looked like a flower almost to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. And this picture, for instance, this building has completely vanished, been removed. I was shooting a story in Nice, in the south of France, and I was following the footsteps of the painter Matisse. And while walking towards this Villa Hotel Regina where he lived, where he painted like a lot of his most famous paintings actually. Mm-hmm.
So they tore it down?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a photographer, it's people always say it's important to always have people criticizing your work and giving you feedback. Who would you say is your toughest critic?
It's probably my partner. She's always coming to see what I do, and then she would occasionally tell me, well, I think the other one is better.
Yeah.
So.
And what do you do when she says that?
I take notice. I think it's important. She's seen a lot of my work, so she sees me editing, and sometimes it's very helpful. Sometimes you get stuck in a corner, and you need to find other people to help you out. It's very difficult to find these people. There are, of course, a couple of colleagues whom I really respect. I have a very good friend of mine who's a very good photographer, and I've known him for like a long time, a very, very long time. And we would talk a lot about photography, and I will most of the time send him like the new stories that I do, and there's another friend of mine who's a filmmaker. So you get like two different perspectives.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Is it difficult to find people who you can really trust with these kinds of questions and these kinds of things?
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult because these people really need to take the time to understand your work, look into it, and I mean like a deep look, a very good look. And this, of course, brings up the question of editing photographs, and we've been speaking a little bit about it during my masterclass the last couple of days. And very often you hear people say you need to get people in order to help you with the editing. And I really disagree about that because I think the photographer should be the best editor of his own work.
Yeah. So you edit all of your own work.
I edit all of my own work. It doesn't mean I don't talk to other people about it, but I think the initial edit should come from the photographer because he had this idea, and the edit should reflect it. So it's very difficult to trust someone else to kind of start editing your idea. You see, so that it's not that I'm against it, but it's the idea originates with the photographer.
Yeah. I think the reason why a lot of photographers who I work with outsource their editing to other people, retouchers and so on, is because it slows them down, you know? Like you can't take on the next project because you're editing the first one.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I want to, the edit of the story actually that's on show currently, I collaborated with a stylist, and his name is Imro Asha, and he's a Dutch stylist. He's based out of Paris, or he's in between Amsterdam and Paris. And I started to collaborate with him 1.5 years ago, and the story with Iman is the second story that we did together. And he is a stylist, but there is much more to Imro than just being a stylist. So
yeah, for sure.
He has his own brand, so he's very interested in other forms of art. And I think that's also why we have a very good collaboration. I should say it's quite unusual. There are very few people that I've ever worked with that had that sort of resonance. And so after the initial edit of that particular story, I share it with him. And it takes us literally like 5 minutes to finalize the edit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's quite different. And I think one of the reasons is most stylists have different perspectives, but his perspective is very, very visual. And I think that's, you probably have noticed when we were shooting, it's all about the picture.
Yes.
It's all about the photo, about the end result. So there is no competition in the sense of the fashion needs to be super important.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think that's quite different.
Yeah.
And I used to work a lot as well with Lucinda Chambers, who is a wonderful British stylist who used to work a lot for British Vogue.
Yeah.
Who had similar qualities. It was all about the story actually. And she would really come up with a storyline rather than like a PDF with a wardrobe. She wouldn't do that. It's the same with Imro. He wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I think it's a fine balance, and it's very challenging for stylists, especially when they're shooting for brands or fashion magazines, because essentially they're there to show the clothes. So I think it's tough to be able to do that.
So I think it's a fine line, though. I think it's good for photographers to remember we actually don't sell the clothes. It's not us. So we shouldn't be too worried about it, but what is the case is that we actually give a sort of a platform, we kind of visualize a world that sort of is a good synthesis with the clothing. And for me, I mean, I do know roughly who makes what, but I'm not like that interested in fashion itself up to that level where I visit every single show or go. That's really not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do know what I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. As an artist, I feel like every artist has their little secret, their secret weapon or their secret touch. What is yours?
Well, I think I always want to try to get to the bottom of things. So I do my research in great detail, and as I really believe that detail enriches a photograph as well, and it kind of enriches the person personally. So I find it very interesting to know more about my subject.
Yeah.
I'd like to know more.
Yeah.
And
when you say research, I mean, how much research do you do? Like, if you were to shoot a fashion story tomorrow, how many weeks, days, hours would you spend researching that on average?
it rarely happens anyone else. It actually never happened. Like, so I don't get that question mostly. But like, let's say I have a fashion story to prepare. I usually prepare I think of a little storyline. I also think of something that I really would like to change from the previous story. It could be a little something, but not necessarily always noticeable by the viewer.
Yeah.
But I usually spend maybe 14 days preparing that. And then as things come in, like locations arrive, I try to refine.
Yeah. And
I try to kind of establish the rhythm of the story a little bit. So if a lot of landscapes or streets, then I eventually start to think maybe I should go inside at some point. Because if you actually shoot inside, you have a little bit more intimacy with your model, with the interaction with the person. And I think that's really is very important for a story. So you build the character a little bit.
yeah.
So if the very first picture of an editorial kind of really features everything, like the model, the buildings, then there is no reason to take the other photographs. So I'm very careful with that.
Yeah.
Give a little bit of information every single time.
Yeah. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like your experience in filmmaking may have also played a part in that. I know that you worked with Ed Lockman, the famed camera operator, and I don't know if that has something to do about that.
I met Ed Lockman really early on, and it was I almost got fresh out of school. And for me at the time, buying 20 rolls of film was a lot.
Yeah.
So when I was sent, eventually I met Ed Lachman when we were doing a job in the Bahamas. I was sent to this little island called Bimini. This was the stage of a James Bond movie.
How did that happen?
I used to assist a photographer. I was a terrible assistant, by the way. So it didn't last very long. But I became really good friends. So his name is Kenneth Hope. He's a British photographer, and he used to assist some big photographers when he was young. So he was directing this film, and he asked me to come as a photographer. And Ed Lachman is mostly known as the cameraman for Wim Wenders. So he shot some really early Wim Wenders movies that I really loved. And watching him at work was a bit of a revelation for me.
What did you learn from him?
The precision and the knowledge, it was just really incredible. And the nights were also really interesting, where he would always invite people from the mainland to fly in. So you have to remember, in those days there was a lot of money in the market in commercial jobs.
Yeah. What year was this?
So this is the early 90s. And so he had this interesting guest coming over. And some things were really interesting. He would talk about filmmaking. To remember, he would invite all these people, and he also had almost a new girlfriend every night. And he tried to introduce this girlfriend to the other people, but he could never remember the name. So it was a little bit embarrassing. But Ed Lachman was a very strange guy with an incredible knowledge. Mm-hmm. And when you would be seated at the table, one night he brought his light meter, and he was just measuring everywhere, under the table, above the table, and then reading. So at one point, it was I asked him, what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to guess the f-stop.
Just for fun?
No, this was the way it was. He just wanted to know. Mm. And And I think he was honestly very bored by most conversations. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then when he would sort of ask advice for photography, he would call someone like Robert Frank or like a really like super established photographer whom he respected.
Yeah.
And he eventually became like this really big Hollywood cameraman
Yeah.
who done a lot of famous movies.
Yeah. So is there anything specific that you learned from him other than his attention to detail and his knowledge? Like,
Well, I learned a lot from the way he would light things. Even though I don't almost never use lights, I learned a lot from that. And the way he set the lights, it was all based upon the location that he actually used as like the guidance for setting his lights. And yeah, it was quite incredible to watch.
yeah. So up until now, you've done a lot of reportage. You worked with Ed Lockman. How did you transition into fashion? You said that you moved to Paris, and that was kind of how you fell into it. What was the first job that you had?
Well, there were a couple of editorials that I did, and there was one for a Spanish magazine that I did. Then I had a request from Vogue Paris, and I just received this text one day, and I thought someone was just making a joke, so I kind of didn't text back for a little while. Then I texted and found out it was real.
Did you have an agent or anyone managing you at the time?
No, not at the time. No. So it was difficult. So I hired a freelance producer, and I started to work with Karin Rootveld, who was actually who just left French Vogue at the time. Instead of another magazine. So there were a couple of editorials that I had that I based on things that I'd actually seen in my documentary stories.
Cool.
Yeah.
So why do you think editorials are important? I mean, it's how we started our company. It's how I think a lot of people start their careers. What do you think about that?
So of course with editorials you kind of show what you can do photographically. You can develop your visual grammar. You also get an insight of how it is to work with other people, to collaborate. It is really like an exhibition in a magazine, which is very nice always. And then you will find with a lot of the commercial clients that they really love those pictures, but they never really want you to produce them because, of course, the commercial clients, there are many different, there's another standard almost. I mean, it serves another purpose.
Yeah.
So in a way, like with the really big jobs, it's almost like it's applied science. Yeah.
You didn't do that, right?
No, I didn't do that.
Cool. So tell us a little bit, we're almost at the time where Iman will be joining us, so tell us a little bit about the story that you shot with Iman in Egypt and how that came about. I mean, you mentioned to us that the idea came to you when you were sitting and having a coffee in your first trip, but how did it actually come to life?
So I had this idea for the story. I made a proposal. I shared it with Imru, the stylist, and there were some other proposals on the table. Because I think mostly these days there are usually a couple of you need to kind of send a couple of proposals, you know, for the magazine to choose from. But I made sure the Egypt proposal looked really good. So and then I spoke to Imre and we said, who are we going to ask for this? And I knew the answer, so we both thought it would be really great to shoot with Iman. And we actually put out one request.
One request for a model, you didn't request anyone else?
No.
Okay.
And then we got like some very depressing feedback, which said, no, that's not going to happen because it doesn't work with the agenda or something, with the schedule.
With her schedule.
Yeah, so we started to think about this other person, and my agent applied some gentle pressure So we finally got the news that we actually would work with Iman on that particular story. And I'd worked a couple of times before with her.
Yeah.
And one time we met her for the first time in Kenya. And we were doing a fundraiser for basically anti-poaching units in Kenya. And so I photographed both Iman and Doutzen, another Dutch model,
Yeah.
for this story.
Okay. So, what would you have done if Iman didn't?
Sorry, say it again.
What would you have done if Iman didn't manage to come? Would you have shot it anyways? Do you think with someone else or no?
Yeah, at the particular moment we were quite far in the production already before we had an okay on Iman. So we would have, if that wouldn't have happened, we would certainly needed to find someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
But sometimes it's really, you build the story, you already have someone in mind, and it's very difficult to kind of change the personage because it kind of changes many other things, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, we have 5 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Until Iman joins. Do you want to take some questions?
Let me just extend a little bit about the story that I shot.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
With Iman and Duitse. So on the tip of that, I shot another story, which I shot for Zeit magazine. Which is basically a more serious periodical. And for that particular story, I went after the poaching units. So there were certain things that could not be shown in the Porter story that I shot for the other magazine. So it was a documentary story. And I collaborated with a producer who is based out of South Africa. And we really came very close to these poachers actually. I attended a court case against one of those poachers, and many other took me to many other places all across Kenya.
Let's set this up. Can you hear us? I think they're still hooking up your sound to the screen.
Could I have a little more light, please?
I can't get this thing to stand.
Hannah, could you give me a little more light?
I'm going to prop this up against my water bottle because I can't. No. Can you?
I can prop it up against my wall.
Oh, I can see myself in the big screen.
You're up on the big screen.
Oh God, okay.
Oh, great. I'll pass you to Vincent.
Hey.
Hey, Vincent.
Dit is Gerard. Dit is zo fijn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? So funny. Wait, I can't hear
Kan
you
je mij
that
goed
well.
horen, Iman?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Eens kijken.
Are we live? Like, are there people there?
I'm gonna... Dat duurt een minuutje. Wacht even.
I think it's because my mic was on.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you're good now, Vincent.
Yeah, you're good to go? Okay. Iman, thanks for being with us. Great to see you. prefer to see you live though. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Do we have sound for Iman?
I think your mic is off.
Do we have sound? Does this work? Kan je me horen, Iman?
Yes, I
Ja,
hear you.
oké.
Do you hear me?
Dit werkt.
Hey.
Good to see you. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and some of those have to do, of course, with the story that we shot here. The first question would really be, I mean, you have worked with such a lot of different photographers in your career, I mean, mostly with everyone. Can you tell us like a little bit about the difference and the differences between those photographers and maybe also similarities?
Having me here. I wish I was in Egypt right now, but we're gonna have to do it like this. But to go to your question, I would say that I think with each photographer, I think they bring their own vision and their own energy. And I think that's what makes this job so dynamic, because you don't know what to expect. And every photographer works their own way. And I think you have some photographers that can be more technical. Some are emotional, like storytellers. You have some that are, they kind of just be in the moment, and they're more of like, they have like more of a spontaneity to it, which I love. But I think what all the great photographers share is that, they are able to make me feel seen. And I think that's very special if you can have that connection with the photographer. So I hope that answers your question. I can't hear.
So one more, yeah. Get to the next question. So tell me, when you come to Egypt and photograph in Egypt, do you feel a different connection to the place? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, absolutely. Whenever I shoot, whether it's in Morocco or it's in Egypt or Africa in general, I feel this sense of coming home. I feel like it becomes very personal. And I think it's very, very special to shoot in, my father's birthplace. And I truly just feel this sense of pride. It's like I'm here, and I feel like my family, like my ancestors, are with me in that moment. And I always hope that people can feel that in the images, and I think they definitely have with the photos, the images that we've taken together. And so yeah, whenever I go to Morocco or Egypt, it's very special.
Have you traveled? Have you
I can't hear you.
Have you traveled a lot in Egypt, Iman?
Yes, I have. Second chance. I haven't traveled through Egypt a lot. Like I just recently started going a lot and kind of revisiting all my childhood memories. And yeah, there's no place like Egypt. I feel like, especially Cairo, I'm from Cairo, and we've spoken about this, is that it is, it's so raw and so kind of like bustling with just so much energy, like you don't know what to expect. And I love that. I love going on the streets of Egypt and just kind of feeling this deep presence. It's very special. So
When we showed the story that we did with Imru,
and I just love the way you work. I think it never feels rushed, or it never feels like, it's always very intentional and thoughtful. And I think you kind of give me the space to fully be myself. And I think that is very unique. And I think us being on the streets of Egypt, like I knew what I was in for, because I think whenever we shoot together, we just kind of let the location guide us. And I think on that day, obviously we've had certain location where we were shooting, but I felt like we let the energy and the presence of the streets of Egypt just kind of take control. And it was risky at times. I remember being on that highway and you were like, just go. But I mean, I trust you so much and like your vision, where I'm always down. I'm like, yes, let's get it. And yeah, I remember like there was one photo where we like walked into that building, and on like every floor, there's like something going on. There's like on the first floor, there was like a store. On the second floor, there was like a family and like kids running around. And then the third, and we just kept going. And I love those moments. Like for me, that's very, very special, and just, stuff that you don't, get in a studio, So yeah, it's very,
yeah, so for me,
But you hit your hand.
you hear me, Iman, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
So for me, it's very visible. Like when I have you in front of the camera, I see this instant connection between you and the environment. Your response on this. So in general, can you elaborate a little more on this in your case, because you also work a lot in the studio in other environments? How do you do that? How do you build that relationship?
I think for me personally, it's, I love shooting on location, because I think, that unexpected brings a certain, um, it just brings a certain energy that you can't plan for. And I love that. And I think, when you're on location, you are surrounded by real people, real life, and I think you kind of have to stay open to it and very alert. And yeah, I think, there's a certain rawness and a certain honesty to the image. And I think I I just love that. And that's what I felt while when we were shooting in Egypt, is just, the rawness of the streets of Egypt, and the people, and, people honking at us and looking at us and being like, what is going on? um, yeah, I think that's very, very unique.
So one more question. hoor je heel slecht, dus voor mij niet makkelijk.
Oh,
What for you are like a few milestones that were like very important in your career, which you felt were very vital?
unfortunately, there aren't that many, Moroccan Egyptian women out there, so I feel a lot of pride in that, and I think also what has been like a vital moment for me is, being on these covers, these big Vogue covers, and to just carry this identity and to share my story has always been something I've been so proud of. And I think especially with, this shoot that we did and kind of, the story was called A Sense of Place. And I think it was extra special for me to be there and showcase the beauty of Cairo and the beauty of my family and my roots. And I think those are the moments where I feel like I've accomplished something. It's when I get to share my story. And I'm very lucky to be able to have done that.
So I think in general, or at least from my side, I would say that when you work with someone, it's a very trusted relationship, right? You work you have someone in front of the camera, and there's trust was one important factor, because if there is no trust, I think you don't get good pictures anyway, because you need the response. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? How does that feel for you?
Yes, 100%. I would like to say firstly that working with you, Vincent, is very special to me, and I absolutely love working with you because we have that level of trust, and I feel like that level of respect, where I feel like I get to be fully myself, and I think, we always are able to capture something so much deeper than just a fashion story or a beautiful image. I just think, having that connection, you are able to create astonishing images. And I think from us with Harper's Bazaar, like all those images, like it was so kind of like cinematic and hands down one of my favorite shoots I've ever done. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I love working with you.
I think yeah, we're good now. Thank you, Iman. Thank you very much. Ja, dankjewel.
I really wish I was there, but congratulations and...
Yep. I will. Hang on for a second.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Iman. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you so much. And big ups to Nadia as well. Big ups to Nadia and her team for making this all come together.
Thank you. That's you.
Thank you.
It's okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. See you guys. Bye-bye.
That was fun.
That was nice. Thank you, Iman Haman.
Yeah, that was technically fun, but I hope you heard some of what was said, because she said a lot of beautiful things. And we are opening the floor if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to ask Vincent. Yeah, go ahead. Do we have a mic? Okay.
Hi everyone. So thank you so much for this talk. It was super exciting to hear everyone's perspective on the shoot and everything else. So my question was, you had mentioned that you had gotten a point and shoot camera and you were shooting without looking.
Can you repeat that, please?
You had mentioned that you acquired a point and shoot camera and you were shooting without actually looking.
Yeah.
And there's feedback. I was very curious about that because you had mentioned that it loosened up your photography practice. So this is something I'm looking for in my own practice. And my second question was...
Let's do it at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think because I felt I was like stuck in a corner like a little bit, repeating maybe too much what I'd done already. I mean, of course it's different, it's never going to be exactly the same. But I was looking for a way of loosening it up, so I just bought a small camera and took a lot of snapshots. And what it did was it just improves your intuition like a lot, because you are looking, but you're not looking through the viewfinder. And the viewfinder can sometimes be put you in a corner because you build your pictures according to the viewfinder. So what I learned from that is that I should build my pictures less from the viewfinder, because when you look through the lens, you kind of judge the perspective, and that's what you kind of tend to correct in your composition all the time.
Thank you so much for that. And my second question is, how do you bring that rawness / storytelling in the studio? So if I understand, of course, you're a documentary photographer, but I'm curious about...
Well, maybe there's a, I would say, like, if you view this, the problem is, I think, with the studio is that you view the studio as a studio. Maybe you should approach it as a space where things can happen. So I think that's a psychological change that you can make. And I think what tends to happen in the studio a lot is that you set up the camera and then you build something, and with the camera in mind. And another way to do it is, of course, can you build something without a camera? And once you are happy with it, you bring the camera in, because you only needed to record what's there. It doesn't need to be there for another reason. And I think a lot of great photographers from the past, like Everden and Penn, for instance, they didn't really set up the frame. They just had the frame and they had it in their mind, and they just knew there was going to happen something. So they would very often shoot next to the camera. They wouldn't be looking through it all the time. So that sort of loosens up the image itself.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? It's back there.
My voice good? Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for this amazing discussion panel. I guess my question would be, do you have any advice to transition from documentary photography into fashion?
Any advice of how to do this?
Yeah.
Well, I think documentary photography, to start with, it's a very good practice. If you go into the streets and look for things that you really find fascinating, or it's kind of, you find unusual. So in order to adapt to these changing circumstances, that's already one big step. So when you also develop a strong sense of dislikes, your likes and your dislikes. So you walk in the street and you have an idea, you walk in the street and you don't necessarily like the street, and you can tell why you don't really love it. You could go someplace else. It sounds really very banal, but I see a lot of young photographers actually not doing that. So they search for a particular photograph in an environment where there's never going to occur. So you should find the environments that you really, really love. And sometimes these environments give you a little clue about a story, or there already is a story. So if you kind of bring someone into that, you already have this rich layer that you don't need to construct. It is just there. And it could be the history of a street, it could be a particular building that you find interesting, but the narrative could also be in the light. It could be very, very small, or the narrative could be a gesture. So if you look at the street that way, and you just walk out of the door, I mean, and especially here, this incredible life in the streets, I mean, there's a lifetime of photography provided by the richness of these streets, you know. So I think the question more is, would you eventually want to transition the reportage photography into fashion, and why? I think if you have a really good reason to do it, then you should. But if not, the street is not a bad option.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? No? All right. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all so much for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.